I got up early on February 3rd, and when I checked heritageunits.com, it turned out that CSX number 1853, the New York Central Heritage Unit, was trailing on a CSX manifest scheduled to come through Wellsboro. Normally, I wouldn't have gone out for it, but the leader was a Canadian National engine, something that doesn't happen very often at Wellsboro. And seeing a Canadian National engine go over the Canadian National Diamond would be pretty funny. So we decided to go. Once we arrived, we were surprised as we saw headlights on the Canadian National line in the distance. Previous to this, I had seen very few CN trains at Wellsboro, so this was quite a shock. Unfortunately, the power was just 2 GeVos, so nothing interesting. The one exciting thing about this train was at the end, there was a CN air car. These boxcars, as you can probably tell by their name, carry nothing but air. They're used during the winter months to keep up the pressure in the brake lines, as they don't want to use more locomotives because that's expensive, and we all know railroads are cheap. After that, we saw this fellow rail fan step out of his car and head up to the diamond. We were surprised, so we walked over to the CSX tracks to see the train, and it wasn't there. We walked over to the CN tracks, and to our surprise, a second CN train was coming. Again, it was just 3 GeVos, nothing interesting. Didn't even have an air car this time. We got back into the car only a couple minutes after that shot. We waited for a bit until we heard a horn reminiscent of an EMD. I was surprised, as CSX's only EMDs are Max. I knew they were rebuilding them, but I was still shocked, but not as shocked this time, when I walked up to the diamond and didn't see a CSX train. Another Canadian National train, in the same direction no less, was coming through. This one a grainer. The leader was an SD70M-2, and the DPU was a -9. Soon after, we looked down the tracks and oh boy, a CSX train. This was on the correct track and going the correct direction to be 1853, and I really thought it was. Unfortunately, it wasn't. The leader was a GeVo and the trailer was a CM44. The CM44, however, was a freshly rebuilt one with very shiny paint. By now, it was 12:30, and we were all hungry. We wanted to go home, but my mom agreed to let us stay for one more train. Then, I looked down the track and saw eastbound headlights, meaning that I was gonna miss 1853. Luckily, though, the clouds did go away, and so I got my first, actually decent lighting shot of the entire trip. Unfortunately, the power was just 2 GeVos. While that was supposed to be the last train of the trip, when I looked down the line, I realized that a CN train had gotten queued up behind that CSX intermodal to cross the diamond. So we decided to stay for it too. Unfortunately, the sun was against it, and so the shot is super backlit, and the power was just 2 GeVos. Following my failure to catch 1853, on February 11th, I was determined to try again. I had seen on heritage units that CP-7023, the Air Force unit, was supposed to come through the depot. I was ecstatic when I learned this, and spent the entire morning stalking the Elkhart rail cam to see when it would come through. It did. So, we got in the car and rushed to the depot as fast as physically possible. But before it could arrive, this eastbound train of entirely gondolas with an AC 44-liter and GEVO trailing had to come through. But there was something sad about this trip. After we left, they put in a no-horn zone in LaPorte, meaning that trains passing through the depot aren't allowed to blow their horns anymore. Which means that this trip will be the last we ever hear of horns at the depot, assuming they don't decide to revoke that change in the future. Okay, there's a train coming. You can barely see it, but down there there's some headlights. This is probably CP 7023. Unfortunately for past me, it was not. Instead, it was the Steel Local Freight, led by the usual pair of Dash 9s. Update, just as before, I can see headlights down there. This could be the fabled CP 7023. Once again, it wasn't. It was a typical NS intermodal with a GEVO and AC 44. Once that train passed, this group of unintelligent individuals started stepping on the tracks and messing with them. They were pulling out railroad spikes and doing general stupid stuff on the tracks. Then a train came. Fortunately, they got out of the way before it showed up. And also, fortunately, it was the fabled train. CP 7023 and a BNSF GEVO were leading this massive autorack train straight through the depot at full speed. And the best part was that I got a horn salute. That was insane. Putting this down as possibly the best, if not one of the best, catches I've ever got. On February 18th, I checked heritage units once again, and it turned out that NS-1068, the Erie unit, was scheduled to come straight through the depot. That was nice. What was less nice was now the trains didn't have any horns. But what was also nice was that there was a fellow rail fan there. His name is Southwest Michigan Railfan, and he's very nice. And what was also nice, man, I've said nice like 6 times in the last 20 seconds, was the first train we caught, an NS Intermodal with an ace leader and an XCEFX AC44 in second. Well, that was unexpected. The next train was an NS Intermodal led by a single engine, an SD70 ACC. Weirdly, the ditch lights are off, or broken, or something's going on there. Anyways, I hadn't seen an ACC leader before, so this was pretty sick. And then, this happened. As it turned out, 1068 was actually the mid-DPU on that train. And yes, I did know that before starting the trip, but of course I didn't tell you for dramatic effect. Anyways, the point is, I just think DPUs are novel, and DPUs on Norfolk Southern are pretty uncommon, so seeing a heritage DPU is really awesome. Anyways, that was the end of the trip. We went home afterwards. On February 23rd, we had to go uptown to get haircuts or food or something. We were doing something. I don't remember. We decided to stop at the depot for a little bit. There wasn't anything interesting coming, but I decided, I might as well try my luck. Not a train, but there were these birds. They're flying back north for the summer. We only ended up catching one train, a normal Norfolk Southern Intermodal with 2 AC-44s. This shot looks super imposing for some reason, and seeing the birds all fly away before the train shows up, yeah, that just adds to it. On February 26th, we had to go to the dentist, and on our way back, we passed through Valpo. I was looking on Google Maps and found this insane spot where the CN, NS, and South Shore cross over each other. Of course, I didn't catch anything on the South Shore. Almost immediately once we arrived, a CN train showed up, and the power was quite exciting. 2 SD75Ms. These are relatively rare on Canadian National, and they're getting rebuilt soon, so seeing this duo of them was quite interesting. Also, the shot looks amazing. The second and final train we saw was a Norfolk Southern one, led by an AC-44, trailed by an SD-70M-2, and had a GEVO at the end as a DPU. You have no idea how refreshing it is to finally hear horns again after 2 depot trips when it was the silent zone. And with that, the month was over. Didn't go out railfanning for the rest of it. Gotta say, this month was absolutely insane. To be fair, it was the first one where I was properly using heritageunits.com and virtual railfan to track the locations of special interest units. This month's gonna be hard to top, though. Let's see what comes in the future. Thanks for watching, and make sure to come back next time for another documentary just like this one.